topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the host and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
What's working on purpose anyway? Each week, we ponder the answer to this question. People ache for meaning and purpose at work, to contribute their talents passionately and know their lives really matter. They crave being part of an organization that inspires them and helps them grow into realizing their highest potential. Business can be such a force for good in the world, elevating humanity. In our program, we provide guidance and inspiration to help usher in this world we all want, working on purpose. Now, here's your host, Dr. Elise Cortez.
Welcome back to the Working on Purpose program, which has been brought to you with passion and pride since February of 2015. Thanks for tuning in again this week. Great to have you. I'm your host, Dr. Elise Cortez. If we've not met before and you don't know me, I'm an organizational psychologist and logotherapist, speaker, and author. My team and I at Gusto now help companies to enliven and fortify their operations by building a high-performance, invigorated culture and leadership activated by meaning and purpose. Our mission is to help our clients create a destination workplace where people flock to join, are intrinsically motivated to perform at their best, can grow into their fuller potential, and are committed to stay and dynamically deliver on the company's mission, which translates to higher profits for you. You can learn more about us and how we can work together at gusto-now.com or my personal site, elisecortez.com. Before we get into today's program, I'm really excited and thrilled to announce that registration is now open for a fabulous new conference for women, for which I get to serve as the MC. That's why I know about it. It's called Thrive in 25, and it's a gem-packed few days in Chicago, June 25th through the 28th, 2025. It's designed to develop women as whole selves, from bolstering your mindset to your financial acumen to leadership to incorporating nature and art into your life to raise consciousness and much more. You can visit thrive-in25.com for more information. So it's thrive, the word N-I-N, and then the numbers 25.com, thrive-in25.com for more information. And to register, you can use my promo code GUSTO in all caps to gain access to the free books and programs I'll be gifting registrants when they register there as well. See you then. Now, today's program, with us today, we have Garen Stoehr. From a young age, he was captivated by aha and light bulb moments, those pivotal experiences that connect passion with potential. This personal fascination evolved into a greater mission, leading him to co-found Durable Minds, where he helps athletes bridge their mental and physical performance, creating synergy between the two. Over time, he expanded his expertise to focus on leadership, learning, and development, applying his extensive skills and knowledge to elevate both individuals and teams. We'll be talking about his remarkable journey and what he's pouring himself into today. He joins us today from St. Paul, Minnesota. Garen, welcome to Working on Purpose.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
It's so good to have you, and I want to give a shout out to Chief Danny Barton, who brought us together. He's been a friend of mine for a few years, and when he mentioned you and what you're up to, I was like, yep, I got to have him on. So thanks for being game.
Thank you.
Well, let's start with this wonderful thing that makes you really unique, Garen, and that is this fascination that you have with the aha or light bulb moments. And I love how you really, you connect the potential that they have for passion and potential. So where did that come from, and why is that so important to you?
Yeah, I think for me, really early, my ultimate mentors, my father and my parents, and I know that sounds cliche-ish, but I was able to really learn from them profoundly at a very early age, and it was the connecting dots, and I found myself going, that totally makes sense. And every time I had that, it was just this massive understanding, and later in life it became kind of the link of knowledge, skills, and abilities to wisdom, and that just started at a very early age.
Well, that's amazing that you've carried that through, and that really speaks to what I talk about, Garen, when I'm talking about the gift of purpose, which is that lens that only you can see in the world, and with and through that, you have the capacity to make a contribution that all of us crave, that really matter and make a difference. And that's what I hear when you share that really remarkable perspective you got so early in life.
Thank you.
Yeah, so welcome. So since we did talk about purpose, and the show is called Working on Purpose, we have to talk about yours. So I understand your purpose is illuminating pathways that bridge individuals or groups to their potential, and then, to their potential. So tell us more about that. When did you get present that that's your purpose, and how do you live that?
I think I've had it early and I didn't realize it.
Yeah.
I think the acknowledgement of it came, I've had some opportunity to and during that in my lifetime, my tenure with Lifetime and teaching leaders around the country on a monthly basis, and found that I was recognizing, as a facilitator, was recognizing those moments for early leaders, people who are really wanting to get into it, making a commitment to getting into leadership, and then being in front of them and teaching some of the basics. For me, it's always been about that next step for them that creates those moments. I think as we get higher and higher, there are executive coaches that do a fantastic job working in the C-suite. That's not me. For me, it's an earlier intervention, and really with my company, Durable Minds and athletes, that was truly apparent in starting to work with athletes, that as early experiences were happening sooner and sooner in the athletic community, specialization was happening with athletes early. There wasn't anything that really bridged that maturity at an earlier age that they needed in order to perform. So it's actually Durable Minds came out of really a little bit of a frustration, right? Is that frustration that fueled the purpose of doing what myself and my business partner had set out to do.
Amazing. So you were talking about some of your work there at Lifetime Fitness as an organization. I happen to be a member of Lifetime Fitness. I love the organization. It's fantastic. But let's go back a little bit further here, because I do know that you studied and have a degree in sports medicine, and of course your early life was of course in fitness. Why that area? Why not architecture, art? Why fitness?
Well, it's funny you asked that. I have a lot of interests, and when I was determining what school to go to, my options were I was looking at and get accepted to Norwich Military Academy in Vermont. I get accepted at University of Maine, Orono for forestry, because one of my options was to. I'm a big nature buff. I love nature. I find my grounding in nature. And so that was a way to be involved in that. And then my third one was my passion for sports and athletics. Was there a way to, when push comes to shove and the time comes where I had to hang up the cleats or the equipment, what's my option to still stay connected? And then once I visited those institutions, I really fell in love with the curriculum and the sports medicine end of things, and really quickly allowed me to make my decision.
Awesome. I love it when that happens early. It was a long, winding path for me, and I ignored, what was whispering in me, which is really the world of psychology. I found my way back to it eventually, but I admire when people just kind of get that early.
Well, it wasn't without question, right? When you get into the mix, but I found my mother was instrumental in that, because initially she had said, if you open yourself up and you really look below the surface, you'll find the true nature of your calling and what you want to do, but you have to be open to it. And when I arrived in campus at that first time in campus, I very quickly found 11, 12 of my closest friends that I'm still in touch with today, and we communicate on a monthly basis. And all of those combined solidified that experience. So I didn't once think about transferring to another institution to get a better experience. I found everything that I needed at the Keene State campus.
That's amazing. Well, you've mentioned your parents a couple of times now. Your mother just in this last bit, and then of course your parents before. And I was really, really interested to learn about your background. That you grew up in a home where your parents took in at-risk youth, and I'm interested in learning about that. How did those experiences, those years, shape you? What did you learn from those experiences?
Well, it happened. It happened so early. It actually, they were committed to that before my sister and I were born, and it happened really early. And so, uh, it's all we knew, to be honest with you. And different people came to our lives. And when I say at risk, I need to define that a little bit. There was addiction. There was bullying. There was individuals who were estranged from their family. And my father was doing work with them at the time. And as really an ultimate professional, we never knew the details of it. We just simply knew that we could provide a home and it became another family member. And and as he did that, and as we gained trust with those individuals, and we got older and older, we started to understand a little bit more about those individuals who were joining our family, because we were started to become mature enough to open that up. But it was difficult. I'll give you an example. This is an extreme, but it's a tough one. My mother at the time had left us with we'll call him John, to honor that confidentiality. But John lived with us, and we were young. I was 7. My sister was 9. She's 2 years older than me, and my mother went to go get groceries and go shopping, and John at the time was an addict and was really working hard on that. She took off. My dad, I think, was at a meeting at the time, but it was early. And so we were watching cartoons and little Bugs Bunny and Tom and Jerry and snuggling up, and he was a family member, and it was fantastic. Well, he had gotten up and removed himself from the couch. Unbeknownst to us, he went and was getting high. And that was one of the expectations in the household, that just didn't happen. And he kind of broke those rules, came back. And at that time, a majority of the drug was heroin and speed, and came back. And long story short, we snuggled back in. We thought he had gone to the bathroom, and went and put his hands up on the back of the couch and took 2 pillows and pushed them down onto my sister and I.
Oh my gosh.
Doesn't recall that, but it was very clear to me as we're talking about it. Actually talked about it a couple times. And during that time then, it felt different than roughhousing. I still have the memory today about it. My mother came home right at the right time and walked in the door to say hi and see how we were doing, saw what was happening, and dropped her groceries. But luckily she had the hindsight to know that the situation wasn't right. So she yelled and said, John, what are you doing? And put the pillows back up, fidgety, and put the pillows back up, and said, nothing at all. And she went in and grabbed us and pulled us out and told him to get out of the house. And at that time, as my sister and I were talking, she goes, it makes so much sense that Mom had always said during that time frame of our life that was about the closest that they came to separating, because of that conflict in wanting to help an individual, but realizing they had crossed that threshold and those boundaries. And my father was adamant about not letting this opportunity go. So it caused a lot of tension. And of course, they protected us from that. But as he was leaving the door and slammed the door on the way out, I remember that it just didn't feel right. I didn't know what it was at the time, and it didn't feel right. And so what my parents were extremely skilled at was educating us at the appropriate level of our age. And that became a norm. And we had different situations, and that's a really tough experience. And that didn't have a great outcome, but we had so many success stories of those individuals living with us that to this day are just extremely tight family members. But it intrinsically cemented this awareness for empathy and compassion that we just saw on a daily basis. And they were such great examples of that.
That's amazing. I obviously was not, didn't expect you to tell the story that you told, hence the look on my face. But thank you for sharing such a real story. These are the moments of life. These are the things that, greatly impress upon us something. And so I really appreciate that you went there. On this note, let's go ahead and grab our first break here, Garen. It happens and it goes by so fast. I'm your host, Dr. Elise Cortez. We've been on the air with Garen Stoehr, the co-founder of Durable Minds, where they focus on leadership, learning, and development to elevate both individuals and teams. We've been talking a bit about some of his earlier parts of life that influenced who he is today. After the break, we're going to get into his journey with leukemia. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Dr. Elise Cortez is a management consultant specializing in meaning and purpose, an inspirational speaker and author. She helps companies visioneer for greater purpose among stakeholders and develop purpose-inspired leadership and meaning-infused cultures that elevate fulfillment, performance, and commitment within the workforce. To learn more or to invite Elise to speak to your organization, please visit her at elisecortez.com. Let's talk about how to get your employees working on purpose. This is Working on Purpose with Dr. Elise Cortez. To reach our program today or to open a conversation with Elise, send an email to Elise, A-L-I-S-E, at elisecortez.com. Now, back to Working on Purpose.
Thanks for staying with us and welcome back to Working on Purpose. I'm your host, Dr. Elise Cortez. I am dedicated to helping create a world where people realize their potential at work. Speaking of potential, Garen, are led by inspirational leaders that help them find and contribute their greatness, and we do business that betters the world. So I keep researching and writing my own books. My latest one came out in March of 2023. It's called The Great Revitalization: How Activating Meaning and Purpose Can Radically Enliven Your Business. And I wrote it to help readers understand today's workforce. What do they want and need to really give their best and stay with you? Because a lot has changed just in the last few years, especially after the pandemic. And then I offer 22 best practices to help fold into your culture to create that for them. You can find my books at elisecortez.com or on Amazon. If you are just joining me now, my guest is Garen Stoehr, whose purpose is to eliminate pathways that bridge individuals or groups to their potential. So I have been very intrigued and did a little bit of research on leukemia, but I want to understand your experience. I found it pretty fascinating that it was 2019, so just 5 years ago, when you learned you had leukemia, at about the same time, of course, that you lost your mom. So let's hear a little bit about what was that like for you, and how did you learn that you had leukemia? What prompted, if there was a test or if there were symptoms?
Well, I committed to not being a guy. What I mean by that is like avoiding the doctors and the physicians and being consistent. I think in the health and fitness industry, you have to be the example, right? And so, although there are times when I've delayed and put it off, I got into a regimen of regular yearly evaluations. And as I was going into my yearly, I had an amazing physician and had my blood work and everything was great, and a quick conversation, and got in the car and headed home. And immediately I got a call from her saying, "We got your blood work back and your white blood cell count is high." But she said, I don't know, you're like extremely healthy and, so forth. It just, let's do it again. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. So we did it the next week and the same thing showed up. I got a call on my way home and she said, "No, it's where it needs to be." And she said that I would love to have you looked at by a hematologist and oncologist. We need to look a little bit deeper into the blood work. And I don't want it to scare you, right? She did that disclaimer in there, but she said it will give us really good information to allow us to move forward. And it's funny because I went home, right? I went home and I just said, "Yep, I'm going to get referred to hematologist oncologist, and my wife had said, "You seem pretty laid back about that." And I said, "Well, it's out of my control. It's not. I don't have enough information. I am an individual that tends not to react until I have information I need to make an appropriate decision about anything, including how I'm going to react to that." And so I said, "We'll see. We'll see how it goes." And a couple weeks later, I went in and met with them and had my blood work. And very quickly, he was able to say, You have CLL, which is chronic lymphocytic leukemia." And I said, "Okay, what does that mean?" And he said, "It's in your blood. It's in your bones. We'll probably need to get a bone marrow biopsy from your pelvis and then evaluate it further. And then from there, we'll monitor. And we could go a year, we could go 2 years, 3 years without doing anything, without any type of treatment. But at some point, there would be intervention. So it became the waiting game. I call it the purgatory, right? Where every single time you go in, you're waiting for some sort of direction. And when it's like, nope, your white blood cells are still rising, but we don't have anything there. That purgatory is really where I truly learned that your self-talk can be extremely disruptive if you're not aware of it, right?
Yes.
The
Yes.
narrative that you create in the purgatory can either fuel or dismiss anything that you have going on in your body. So my real quick commitment was to control. I can only control what I can control. And as we get information, we'll see what is next. And they were great in terms of educating me along the way, which was wonderful. But it became a couple of years of monitoring. The hard part is that week. So I got diagnosed on a Monday. My sister had called me in the week and said, "Mom isn't doing well. I know you were out here recently, but if you, I'm just telling you, if you don't come out now, we might miss your opportunity to say goodbye." And so my wife said, "Yeah, that is not even an option. Like, go." And total support, which was amazing. I got out there on Friday and was able to be with her and had some special moments there. But I wasn't. My mother, with her empathy, I didn't share with the family when I went out there. It wasn't a priority.
Right.
And so I made a determination not to share. I didn't need my mother thinking about that as she was passing. I didn't need my sister as a caregiver, and certainly my dad being exhausted from being a caregiver as well. And so I withheld that information for a period of time, and then brought it back to the table with the family.
Wow, I really admire your strength and just your focus, and I can appreciate that. That would definitely not be the time to share that news. I totally appreciate that. Having lost both of my parents and been there for my mother's passing, I really understand that, and applaud that choice. What's treatment like? What are you doing for treatment?
It's interesting. I laugh because I have had an extremely uneventful treatment, except for day one. So day one for me of treatment was on January 8th. As we all know, the dates in which this stuff begins for us, right? It was a 2-day treatment. And the first day I went in and I received an IV, small IV. It's called pre-medicine, a small IV of Benadryl, made me a little tired, and then turned right around 20 minutes later and put a small bag of steroid, which woke me up immediately right after that. And it was all preparation for obituzumab, which is a new drug, infusion drug that I had taken. And then 2 weeks later, I added a chemo medicine that I take at night, chemo pills that I take at night. But on that day one, my wife was with me, and I was sitting in there, and she looked at me and she said, "Your face is really red." And I'm like, yeah, it's warm. I'm a heater. You can't even lay next to me without, at night. It's just the way I am. And then she looked at me soon after that and said, your eyes are getting red. And I'm like, really? I don't feel like they're stinging at all. And the nurse had said, please let us know if there's anything different. So of course she did that. And then not 30 seconds after that, my airway started to close. And I felt it rising up and getting up into my neck, and I was having trouble breathing. And then 30 seconds after that, Elise, I swear an archer was behind me and shot an arrow in my trap and my sacrum. Just 2 spots in my body about the size of a quarter. There was excruciating pain. And when I say that, you're talking to an individual who's been hit by a car before. Like, wow. It was really hard to sit still. And usually I can work through discomfort. I work through pain. I don't have to suffer, right? So I can breathe, but I couldn't breathe. So I got a little bit anxious, still under control. And the team came in really quickly, put a little shot into my IV line, and within 5 minutes, I was back to normal. But to tell you the impact of that, when I went in for my first treatment, my white blood cell count, a normal count, is 4,500 to 10,000. My count was 135,000, which was the reason I was starting treatment. The next day, and by the way, I'll just share this quickly. I was at a 25 milliliter drip, which is like drip, go home, have dinner, come back, drip. There's just so much time in between. It's a slow process, but I'm super glad they did it that slowly. But then they said, we'll see you in 16 hours, and then we'll start you at 50 milliliter drip and go to 400. And I said, excuse, I just turned into Jack from The Incredibles, and you're telling me you're going to jump to a 400 milliliter. So I was a little bit anxious in that situation. The message to me was the body learns. The body learns. So trust us, which I did. The next morning I went in and did blood work before my treatment, and I had gone from 135,000 down to 1,200.
Wow. That's amazing.
It eradicated every abnormal cell that I had at that time, which a majority of was in my spleen. My spleen had gone from 11 centimeters to 20, which is the reason we started treatment. All of this without symptoms. And so the next day I went in a little bit anxious, and then got into treatment. And the next 6 hours I was doing work. I was on my computer, nothing. And since then I haven't had anything. And I'm going to be honest with you. That was difficult. The physical was difficult, right? But the hardest part for me was I started to develop this survivor's guilt. So I was going into the clinic, and people are covered in blankets with sock hats on, trying to stay warm, trying to sleep as they're getting treatment. I have another one and then behind another curtain who is burning from the inside out. Everybody's experience is so different. And here I come hugging my nurses and, how are you? Great. And I said to them, I said, I'm struggling with this because I'm not having the same experience that they are. And she said, she was great. She goes, you are what they need to see. Mm-hmm. Right. And so don't not bring your energy and your light and all of that. And she goes, that's what they need to see, because that's what they'll become. That's what they're working towards. It's just, you've had a different experience and allowed you to get there sooner. And that really helped me work through that. Then it became, I come to the clinic with purpose. Versus just a treatment. So
amazing story. Now I want to just make sure I understand this. If I didn't follow it, I'm guessing that my listeners and viewers didn't either. I didn't quite understand the pain that you were talking about. What was behind that?
It was the treatment. They were either spots in my body that were compromised somehow.
Oh, okay.
It was on my sacrum or a trap, and that's where I felt the pain. Only in those 2 areas.
Okay.
But it was part of the medicine.
Got it. Okay, got it. Well, now, of course, I have to really understand, just given the work that I do and who I am, I want to understand what living with leukemia has taught you about life and its meaning.
Yeah, so I appreciate that. For me, it's as simple as this. When every decision that you make can either put you in durability or in drama. And I do not care to feed the beast. So for me, I would meet every couple weeks with my brother-in-law, and we would meet at a microbrew and catch up on times and have a beer. I went in, and as soon as I found that my platelets had dropped a little bit, I'm like, okay, what does that mean? What's involved in that? And they're like, it could be alcohol. And I'm like, well, I don't drink that much, but that's done. And he's like, I'm not saying you have to stop. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to feed the beast. Mm-hmm. So decisions like that were really helpful. Trying to reduce the amount of sugar, all of those things they're not necessary. And so we're limiting the amount of things that are necessary. Not that I don't indulge here and there, but it becomes a very conscious decision. As well as I have a number of friends that have their own health challenges. And my conversation to them is, I'm available for unconditional support, but I have to tell you, I can't take on the emotion of your disease. But I will be there however I can be there for you. So setting boundaries and conversations along those lines are really, I think, critical. And it really, helped me move my blood marker. All my blood chemistry is in the green now. My spleen is back to normal. I still have chemo pills that I'll take until the end of January, but for all intents and purposes, it's there. But I know it's a chronic disease. So you had commented to me on my Facebook post and how I made it a kind of a story around competition and being competitive. And one of the things is that I know it's coming back to play for another season, right? Yeah. And but what I know from playing it this last season is I know that I will be an extremely educated competitor when it decides to show itself again.
So much to learn from you and be inspired by you, Garen. I'm really, really happy to know you and cross paths. And let's let our listeners and viewers just kind of think about what you shared there while we take our next break. I'm Elise Cortez. We've been on the air with Garen Stoehr. He's the co-founder of Durable Minds, where they focus on leadership, learning, and development to elevate both individuals and teams. For this part of the show, we've been hearing about his experience with leukemia. After the break, we're going to hear more about the work he's doing at Durable Minds. We'll be right back.
Dr. Elise Cortez is a management consultant specializing in meaning and purpose, an inspirational speaker and author. She helps companies visioneer for greater purpose among stakeholders and develop purpose-inspired leadership and meaning-infused cultures that elevate fulfillment, performance, and commitment within the workforce. To learn more or to invite Elise to speak to your organization, please visit her at elisecortez.com. Let's talk about how to get your employees working on purpose. This is Working on Purpose with Dr. Elise Cortez. To reach our program today or to open a conversation with Elise, send an email to Elise, A-L-I-S-E, at elisecortez.com. Now, back to Working on Purpose.
Thanks for staying with us and welcome back to Working on Purpose. I'm your host, Dr. Elise Cortez. I mentioned in the last break that my latest book came out in March of 2023 called The Great Revitalization. What I did for you is I created a 3-page assessment that you can pull off my website to determine the extent to which your culture is meeting the needs of today's discerning workforce. It's at gusto-now.com. It's the assessment. You'll find it there on most of the pages. If you are just now joining us, my guest is Garen Stoehr, whose purpose is to illuminate pathways that bridge individuals or groups to their potential. So before we get into what you're doing at Durable Minds, I did find it pretty interesting and wanted to get you to speak on the George Floyd murder was a very important experience for you in your life. How so?
Well, we were, being in St. Paul, kind of ground zero for that was Minneapolis, and we live right in between the two. And so when that event happened, a lot of the aftermath, or a lot of the incident flowed into St. Paul, and we're actually just a couple blocks from the ground zero of where it entered into St. Paul. It was a Target that was right next to a police precinct. And at that time, when we were seeing what was going on, I had a scanner on my phone, and it was important to me to understand kind of what was going on as it was continuing to migrate throughout the Twin Cities. And what I was hearing on the other end is just down the road, there was a pharmacy that had been set ablaze, walking distance from us, from our home. And there was a report of 150 to 200 individuals gathering and starting to throw rocks at the fire department as they were trying to put out the blaze. And it had gotten to the point where we put together a bug out bag, right? At the end of the day, as my safety for my family was number one out of anything, although I very much like to support community, that became my priority. And just to be on the safe side. Well, sure enough, I get other scanning, and it's a police scanner, other scannings of an Amazon truck that was getting pulled over by a car with individuals in it with AR-15s, and they were looting the Amazon truck. And so the driver had gotten out and had fled and just left the truck in there as well. And that was very close. We were getting close to home. And I said, you know what? Let's get our bags. Let's go to the cabin. Let's get out of town for 24 hours and let's just stay tuned, see where it goes. And we did. We went to my sister-in-law's first, and then ended up going to the cabin after that. And when we came back, things had eventually settled down, and it was all in the COVID time as well. So there was a lot going on, and we had made the decision to, as rinks were shut down and hockey was not happening anymore and things along those lines, I had put together, we called it the COVID camps. They were weekly themes that I did with my daughter and my nephew to keep them engaged and to have fun with them, and a cardboard camp, building sculpture. But one of them was an awareness around the George Floyd incident, and really looking at the bigger picture and having appropriate conversations as my parents had with my sister and I when we were younger. It was my opportunity to bridge that and to have that conversation, with our daughter at that time, who out of my 4 children, she was the one that was still at home, and my nephew, and we put together and had them do canvases and paintings of how they felt about it. And then we went and we were able to show them unfortunately, the massive destruction from that event, and went to the square, the ground zero square, and left their canvases on the sidewalks, along with other memoriam that was set up from other people there to acknowledge it, and to really say, here's what I understand about it, and then now we can set it down, and now we can move forward. And it was a crafting activity that allowed to put some closure and start working on, revitalization, whatever that meant for our family, right? I kept going back to early intervention for my sister and I was so significant to us, and now here we're facing it with my wife and our own children. So we needed to take an opportunity to make that a productive productive event or an opportunity.
I appreciate you sharing that. Incredibly tragic, horrendous event.
Very much so.
And I hope that we as a nation learned a lot from that experience and from that loss. I don't know if we have, but the optimist in me says that I hope that we have and are.
Right.
But thank you for sharing what you did around that. That was just, I don't know I had no idea what you were going to say about that experience, and that was incredibly refreshing. So,
Good.
So thank you. So let's now then go on to what you're doing at Durable Minds. One, I love the name of your organization, your company,
Right.
Durable Minds, right? Names are so important. And clearly, mindset is a big part of what you do. But, this whole notion of helping athletes link their mental game to their physical game is part of what you do there. So can you just kind of start telling us a little bit about what you do there? How do you find the people that you work with, and how do you help them?
Yeah. So the business was my brother-in-law and I had met on it, and again at one of our times together, and we had been thinking about similar things at the same time. He has a son who's a goalie, and in hockey, and when you win 3-2, you still let 2 in. So there's an emotional tax, right, that comes with some of these positions, and what if game, like there isn't anything available. Like our coaches are dealing with so much behavioral things, either on a field or on a pitch or on an ice rink, that it's taking away from the effectiveness sometimes of working on strategy and skills and so forth and so on. So we had put together a curriculum that allows us to empower the athlete, to take some of that responsibility away from the coach and put the onus back on the athlete, and actually have them build an accountability team around them to help hold them accountable to their own behaviors. And what the intention is to take some of that stress away from the coach and away from the parents and onto the athlete to be the best version of a competitor that they can be. And it's really, we really felt like, again, a lot of colleges and universities have resources available to them, but the high schools, they don't. Yet we're seeing these behaviors earlier and earlier in the athletic careers, and with specialization coming earlier. And so again, it became, what are we going to do about it? And we decided that we would work on that and put together a business that addressed that.
Amazing, absolutely amazing. And of course, I appreciate as well that how would you situate this idea of this elevated perspective that I think you have here on linking mental health with physical games. I think is very, especially given your own experience competing with leukemia, as you like to say, just very interesting to me how there's a really interesting thread that goes through your whole life when it comes to fitness, mental acuity, how you manage your own mindset. It's quite fascinating to me how that's all woven together for you.
Thank you. Yeah, I've been lucky to continue to follow what it is that I love to do, and the health and fitness was just the beginning of that for me. And I have put a premium on surrounding myself with, such as yourself, with people that have elevated experience even over myself, to really link these opportunities of knowledge and skills, abilities to hopefully have wisdom moments that can work for other people.
I love that. Wisdom moments. I'd like a few of those, please. I thought it was also quite interesting that you situate that creativity and resourcefulness are two areas that you especially lean on in your consultative practice with leaders and organizations. Why and how so?
Well, I think one of the things that I found is that I think systemically, and I say this in society as well as business and so forth, is there is more than enough information out there. And as an organization, what I found sometimes is that a lot of the information that's available to their employees or their athletes is not filtered in an intuitive architecture. right? So it's, oh, we have that. Oh, we have that. And when you do a significant discovery session, which, by the way, thank you for that last session that you had in that area. When you have a significant either strategy session or discovery session, you find out that the effectiveness of all that material, even though it's available, it may not be hunting, right? So give you an example, as I worked with a swim company that was looking to educate their instructors when they came on. And it was a gentleman who I had worked with, who was the CEO, who called me in to work with that company and say, hey, we have information, we have a training that we do for employees, but in my opinion, it's not where it needs to be. And so doing the discovery session, I found out that there was, if you were to lay all of the collateral out on the table, you wouldn't know where to begin. And so I worked to build an architecture around that. So from the time that somebody says yes to employment, their onboarding becomes seamless, their training becomes seamless, and then the experience to the member is a experience that then can get publicized and in the appropriate way. So those outcomes. So I built a frontline certification that went from a net promoter score of 7 to a net promoter score of 73.
Wow.
And I had measured all employees beforehand, and I had measured all employees over a period of time after the new certification had been launched. And it was a significant difference. And so my belief is that in that situation, we had to deconstruct in order to then reconstruct. On top of that, let's figure out a way to do it creatively in today's world, so that more of it becomes sticky, right? At the end of the day, that's what we're asking, is that we can get a percentage of attention to the content over a period of time, far more significant than we might have when we first started.
That is really impressive. 7 to 73 for a net promoter score. That is phenomenal result.
Thank you. Yeah, very proud of that.
Yeah, that is terrific. I was going to ask you if you had a case study, and I think that pretty much qualifies for that, unless there's anything else you wanted to share that just kind of also illuminates for our listeners and viewers, just say in about 30 seconds, maybe kind of how it is you work with people.
Yeah, so I've been in the learning and development process. I've always used, in the company I work for is called the 5Ds, in designing even durable minds. It's the ADDIE process, right? The learning we assess and design, develop, implement, and evaluate. And but the question becomes is, how are you doing each one of those? It's different because some companies' resources are limited if they're a startup company, and others have extensive software that you can use. And so I go back to the discovery process of like all of that is illuminated in a really, really great discovery process. And so it's no different for myself. It was no different when we started building durable minds.
Wonderful and amazing. That was so crisp. So here we've already gotten to the end of the show. The show is listened by people around the world, Garen, who are interested in either elevating their own experience of work, learning more as to how to become more of an effective or inspirational leader, or are wanting to architect a culture that is what I call a destination workplace. What would you like to leave them with?
Well, I think the work starts with you as an individual, and I think at the end of the day, one of the most significant exercises that I go back to constantly, multiple times per week, is this exercise around what is it that I'm wanting to attain? And then out of those experiences that I'm having along the way, what's in my control and what's out of my control, what's out of my control and then what's in my control. And I create a significant link to the things that are in my control and how it will positively influence the things that are out of control, because it can go south as well, right? If we don't have what we call green zone behavior that's productive. And so when we link that, it allows us to stay out of the drama and really either move to or stay in the durability.
What a fantastic way to close. Garen, I'm so happy to know you and share with my listeners and viewers around the world. Thank you for coming on Working on Purpose and sharing your heart and soul.
Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Listeners and viewers, you're going to want to learn more about Garen Stoehr and the work he does at Durable Minds. So just head on out to durableminds.net. That's his website, durableminds.net. Last week, if you missed the live show, you can always catch it via recorded podcast or wherever you get your podcasts. We were on air with Karen Golden-Biddle, the author of The Untapped Power of Discovery, How to Create Change That Inspires a Better Future. She gave us some provocative insight on how to create a culture of discovery in organizations and shared several inspiring stories showcasing the results of people and organizations who embrace the discovery process and from her book. Next week, we'll be on the air with Ben Lytle talking about his powerful book, The Potentialist 2, The Pursuit of Wisdom. His book is packed with so many novel insights on human potential, and we'll showcase as many as we can in our conversation there next week. See you there. Remember that work is one of the best adventures and means of realizing our potential, making the impact we crave. So let's work on purpose.
We hope you've enjoyed this week's program. Be sure to tune into Working on Purpose, featuring your host, Dr. Elise Cortez, each week on W4CY. Together, we'll create a world where business operates conscientiously, leadership inspires impassioned performance, and employees are fulfilled in work that provides the meaning and purpose they crave. See you there. Let's work on purpose.